Greetings, welcome back. So, we did the live stream for anybody who's watching. Yeah, it just kicked me off the server. So, in the midst of it, it says you've lost connection to the EA server and broadcast stops. I've always wondered, but if I'm broadcasting on the PlayStation, why do I have to be on the EA network unless I'm on HUT? So, if I'm doing an offline feature, EA reasons. So, yeah, there you go. Thanks to people who came out. Actually, at the time it timed out. Probably for the best, anyways. Yvonne had to go and take kids places and things of that nature. So, and the Canucks did come back and win that game. They won 6-3. So, next live stream we'll start with the game after that and go from there. So yeah, currently the Vancouver Canucks team, which I haven't done anything with, is 8-0-1. So for Canuck fans watching this, they're going to go undefeated in regulation this year. It's going to happen. The only overtime loss was to these guys. That's it. So pretty solid overall run. Now, today's further news, Gavrikov, who was apparently nowhere near a contract. Apparently it took a little bit of work, but they got it done. He signs a 3-year contract for $8.4 million in total, $2.8 million per season. And Gavrikov, pretty solid all-around defenseman and good move. Good move for him and for the Columbus Blue Jackets as well. So that's done. Now it's up to Dubois, and I don't think they'll have a problem keeping Dubois either. I think it's a matter of term as much as anything else with players right now. Do they want to sign for less money over a shorter term, or do they want that longer term and more, long-term stability that they're looking for? So yeah, we'll see what happens with Dubois. He's up next. Matt Dumba. So there's been a lot of talk about trading Matt Dumba. Now what's interesting is this comes out today, and this goes into something that I was talking about during the live stream. I went through and I did a simulated expansion through Cap Friendly, has the Seattle expansion tool. And it's not perfect because we don't have a season yet this year, so we're not sure exactly what players may or may not be available. There's a certain number of players that have to be exposed in order to meet requirements. But with Minnesota, I actually found that you could protect. So there's 3 defensemen with no movement clauses. I found that I was able to protect Dumba, and because it's a young roster and guys like Kaprizov and Rossi you wouldn't have to worry about protecting. Honestly, I went with 4 forwards and 4 defensemen, and the list of players that was available, there were a couple of rather tempting players, but I think that might be Minnesota's best move. So Minnesota, apparently, he's not on the trade block right now. Trade talks have really quieted down. Of course, half the league is up against the cap, so it makes sense. And for other teams, it might be a situation where they're thinking, well, yeah, if we bring in Dumba, but then we have to protect him and we could lose that guy. So that's what's going on there. And again, like I've put on the board here, remember, they can protect 4 defensemen. That just means they can only protect 4 forwards. It's 8 skaters in total. So we'll see what they do, but I don't think it's the end of the world if they still have those 3 no movement clauses and then they protect Dumba. I don't. So we'll see what happens. Interestingly enough, Ben Hankinson, who played in the NHL here and there, he's Byfuglien's agent, and he thinks that Byfuglien should want to come back. But it's up to Byfuglien. He has to get in shape, and he has to want it. And that's been the word with Byfuglien for over a year now, that he doesn't really feel like it. He could come back. He could get himself in shape. He could go out and play. He doesn't really feel like playing. That competitiveness has kind of fallen off. And he mentions as well that he feels like Minnesota could be a good fit. So I'm not going to argue with that. I think if Byfuglien were able to come back and play to his potential, yeah, Minnesota would probably be a good fit. And then he might end up being a guy that Seattle would look at. Again, if he was in shape and he had a good year, then Seattle could look at and say, you know what, that might be our best option out of Minnesota. So again, we'll see if anything else happens with Byfuglien, or if this is just his agent trying to, give him a little bit of a nudge to see what he does, and then he's going to say, forget it. But everything that I've heard over the last year has been, no, he is not on skates. He doesn't want to play. He's not in shape to play hockey. And that competitive side that you need to play professional sports, he just doesn't have that right now. So yeah, now here's, and again, this is from the odds sites. So look for this, where what would the odds, what would the bettors think? Toronto would be favored to win a Canadian division, and this is going to be analyzed and scrutinized tons. If there's a Canadian division, which team would be favored to finish first? Honestly, I kind of lean towards Edmonton, to be honest. with McDavid, with Draisaitl, with some of the additions that they have, I would kind of favor Edmonton to finish above everybody else in a Canadian division. But, and again, this was talked about in the live stream as well. I think that would be fascinating. And then how you do the playoffs could be interesting too. Because if you don't play teams outside your division, how do you know which one's necessarily the best in each division? That kind of thing. Do you just play it out in your division and then have the final four come together? Or do you do some kind of, say, one versus one from, let's say the Canadian team one faces number 4 from the West. And then number 1 from the Central faces number 4 from the East. If you went with 4 divisions that way. Just as an example. Just that kind of thing. And then, of course, 2 versus 3, 3 versus 2, 4 versus 1. And cross divisions, or do you just have interdivisional matchups? Nope. It's probably going to be intra-divisional through the first 2 rounds. But we'll all discuss this until the NHL action comes out and confirms what we already know is very, very likely. That we will have a Canadian division for this season only. And, for ratings, it would be huge in Canada. And honestly, on the American side of things, to have regional games where, if you're Chicago and you're going to see St. Louis 6 or 8 times, it's going to help local ratings for them as well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, but I'm going to disagree and say I think Edmonton would probably be the best team in a Canadian division. Montreal would be a team that could end up being in a top 4 spot that might not be expected. And then from there, I think it's a free-for-all. I think there's a lot of really good teams out of Canada right now. So we'll see. Now, one thing that came out today as well is that many players who belong to Canadian teams are right now looking at getting into Canada, doing the 14-day quarantine, and then working out. Now, we are up to November 5th. If they're looking at coming to Canada, doing the 14-day quarantine and getting out on the ice, that would lead you to think that we may very well have hockey back in January. So if they weren't thinking it was going to come back until February, now would not be the time that they were looking to come into the country, do their quarantine, and then get out on the ice. So this is good news for those who want to see hockey back in January. It looks like that could very well be the case. We are currently 56 days away, so 8 weeks away from the end of the year and potentially seeing hockey back on the ice. The NBA coming back is going to put pressure on the NHL to come back as well. Because I agree with Bettman that if the NHL's not on the ice and they don't find a way to have a season this year and they listen to grumbling owners about losing money, they are going to lose tremendous market share on television, and they're going to lose a lot of interest south of the border. And they've done their best to cultivate interest south of the border for decades. And this is the year where it can finally come to fruition, where they get a huge TV contract. If you don't play this year, you can throw all that out the window. It's going to be interesting, and I'll be here to report on it whenever what happens. And I'd be interested to know what you guys think. So, Canadian division, who do you think would be the best team in that division? Who do you think would be number 1? And which one would be the surprise team out of that? Because again, Ottawa's the one team you can look at in Canada right now and say, well, they're still coming out of the rebuild. They're still probably going to have some struggles along the way. But the other 6, you could make an argument for any of the other 6 that they're going to be pretty darn good. So I think it's going to be an interesting year, and I'd be interested to know what you guys think. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.